Back in the mid-2000s, the humble British badge of MG decided to build a supercar. And it was this, the MG SV. You probably remember it from Jeremy Clarkson's review, and he talked about a specific aspect of the car that has been associated with it ever since. It was said from new that the SV could come with a nitrous oxide kit that would take it to 1,000 horsepower. Now that sounds massively far-fetched to me, and I've never come across one of these cars with anywhere near that sort of power output. So was that claim true? Well, the answer is kind of yes, but really no. Let me explain. Hop back to the early 2000s and MG Rover was a thing. The brand decided that the best form of marketing was to go racing and to have a supercar. The X-Power brand was born, and MG decided to compete in LMP2 and also sought the help of the Italians to create a supercar. A manufacturer called Cavalli was building a car called the Mangusta for De Tomaso, but the project never really got off the ground. Someone at MG had that intel and swooped in to tweak the car into something with an MG badge on the bonnet. Push button start. Meaty. And so was born the MG SV, a V8 British supercar, with an American engine and Italian underpinnings. Although the overall design was put together by Peter Stevens, the designer of the McLaren F1 and the Jaguar XJR15 to name a few, so it is kind of British. Then in swung the MG marketing team. How could they light a fire under this car's arse to get it flying out the showrooms? Well, power, apparently. So they put out a press release saying that the SV could be had from factory with a 1,000 horsepower nitrous kit. Maybe one of the marketing guys had seen that there were high horsepower Mustangs over in the States, and they thought they could copy and paste those mechanicals into the MG. And to be honest, at the time, nitrous was really popular. But in the end, it was all just marketing BS. This car, that engine, was simply not in any shape to suddenly deal with a 4-figure power output. Let's take a look at the engine. The SV came with a 4.6 litre Ford modular V8, but this is something a bit more special. This is an SVR, which has its engine bored out to 5 litres and has a racing cylinder head. That gives it 385 brake horsepower, which is 65 more than the standard car. Before we continue with this story, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Liqui Moly. As well as producing top-level oils and other lubricants, they also produce additives that can give your engine a new lease of life. I've been using this Ceratec engine oil additive in my Mondeo's V6, with the aim being to reduce friction and wear, and I've also been using their injector cleaner, which can give any petrol engine a bit more performance, including this one right here. If you'd like to see what additives are applicable for your car, we've left a link in the description below so you guys can check it out. Back to the story, and the SVR is the next piece in this mythical puzzle. There was one man that was enlisted to get the 5-litre engines from America over to the UK to put in the MGs. His name was Brian Luty, and he actually still owns a specialist MG workshop up in Callander in Scotland. He was seen as the MG SV god, so it was safe to say he was puzzled by a phone call that came his way, considering he was the expert. MG's worst nightmare had happened. Someone had ticked the box to have a nitrous kit in their MG SV. Oh no, what now? Well, they got on the phone to Brian and he spelled it out for them. Yes, you could get 1,000 horsepower from one of these engines, but it wasn't going to come solely from nitrous. If you put a shot big enough to have 1,000 horsepower of nitrous into this engine, you would very quickly see your crankshaft bouncing down the road behind you in your rearview mirror. Brian stated that his garage could convert an MG SV to 1,000 brake horsepower, but 1, it wouldn't be factory, it would be like any other custom tuning job. 2, nitrous wouldn't be the sole route to 1,000 brake horsepower, with a supercharger and a properly built engine being the first port of call. And 3, it would cost half the value of the car to do the job properly, including bespoke parts like a new bonnet, new space created in the engine bay for a new exhaust system, space for a more robust gearbox, as well as space down the front of the engine for a chunky supercharger pulley system. So what is the MG SV actually like to drive? Well, I've never had a go in a TVR, but I imagine this is pretty close to that same recipe. Now, I would call this a supercar because back in 2004, it kind of was, but when you look at it today, 385 brake horsepower is not much at all. That's proper sports car territory. But in second gear, on quite a wet road, it doesn't hang about, it goes. It does seem fairly nimble, but that might be just because of its lightweight. The suspension setup though stops you from really committing to a corner. This is not a car that you look at a corner and think, right, I'm gonna throw it in there. I don't have much confidence in this front end, and the car just darts all over the road. You have to constantly steer it to keep it in a straight line. You do not have to do that in a 911. Basically, MG's 1,000 brake horsepower claim was completely unviable and was simply a PR myth to try and sell cars, with absolutely no thought given to the fact that someone might actually ask for that option. People have since speculated that the nitrous kit came from the ZTT Bonneville record car, but that car's whole powertrain was a bespoke job by Roush, and there's no clear evidence that it even used nitrous. So, getting back to the question, was Jeremy wrong about the MG SV? Well, the factory nitrous kit was a complete myth, an MG marketing man going off on a whim. But in Jeremy's defence, the entire motoring media will have read that press release and taken it as gospel. How were they to know any different other than diving in to the inner workings of MG Rover at the time? Still, the MG SV is one of my favourite forgotten supercars. I mean, just look at it. Thanks again to the sponsors of today's video, Liqui Moly. As I said earlier, there's a link in the description below where you guys can check what additives they produce for your car. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to Drive Tribe. I was going to drive the car more, but because of the weather, sadly, for today's shoot, it's the end of the line.